in God's order, what do we put at the top?
Christ.
Christ. Okay, good. And then who is Christ supposed to lead?
Man.
The man. Okay. And then who's the man supposed to lead?
Woman.
Okay. The woman. And then the children next, right? They're at the bottom. And so I like the way he drew the yin yang. And you know what the yin yang is, right? Yin yang. It's an occultic symbol. It says there's equal and opposite forces in the universe. That's where we're out of balance. It's been patriarchal. It's been the men. And so we're not asking to be above them. You can see this is all a result. Satan's taken advantage of one thing, not John 3:16, but Genesis 3:16, which would be what? There was a curse put on her, right? And what was that curse? Your desire shall be for your husband, yet he shall rule over you. Now, that's the principle of first mention, desire and rule. Some people misinterpret like your physical or sexual desire shall be your husband, but he shall, well, put it in context. He just got through following her and taking her advice. And then he says, after your desire, and yet he shall rule over you. The curse is not that the man's going to rule. The curse is that her desire will be to take that. Now, get this. Let's look at the very next chapter where those same two words are used in a verse. Cain, right? What did God say to Cain? He said, sin's desire, but you need to master it or rule over it. Same two Hebrew words, rule and desire. Okay? Same thing. So we see how it's used in the Bible. If something wants to have mastery over you that's out of place, and you have to conquer it. Okay? So this is all of Satan coming along and misusing, okay? Now, where did we get all this stuff about, this structure and stuff? Well, in 1 Corinthians, okay, 11:3 has God's order. But I want you to understand that Christ is the head of every man. The man is the head of the woman. God is the head of Christ. Okay, it doesn't mention kids, but if you go to Ephesians 6:1, it talks about kids submitting to their parents. Okay, so that would be God's order. And here's what James 3:16, we have a lot of 3:16s. And this is where Satan works through the flesh. He says this, it says, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there is disorder in every evil thing. Where jealousy and selfish ambition, in other words, someone's dissatisfied with their place that God has them. And it's like the guy was saying, oh my gosh, the women are the one that really, if they fall apart, the whole thing falls apart. You can't, and that's why Satan knows to attack that part, because it's the linchpin. Pull that out, it just all crumbles. So that's when the woman is dissatisfied, wants more in all areas, and just goes off, does her own thing, and then there's disorder. Now, it says in 1 Corinthians, okay, 14:33, same Greek words. For God is not a God of confusion. It's the same word as disorder in James. God is not the God of disorder, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. So it tells us God is a God of order. And then when Satan comes in and works through jealousy and self-ambition, there's disorder. Okay? So that is kind of Satan's ploy in the world. So when you get this reversed, and then the woman usurps the authority from the guy, okay? All of a sudden the man's down here and the woman's on top, right there. But then it doesn't stop there. What does she do? She gives it to the kids. They become her God, is what it is. And in their minds, they're actually doing good. Let's give the little Hito whatever he wants. And seriously, I know it's sad. So now she takes it from the man, and then the children are at the top, right? So where does that leave God? Actually, he's still at the top, except it's a different God. 2 Corinthians 4:4. The God of this world, Satan has blinded the mind of the unbeliever. Now, does that verse fit? Blinded the mind. So now Satan achieves his goal to be on top. He wasn't even in the picture. But yeah, 2 Corinthians 4:4. I've quoted that one so many times through the years. 9 out of 10 times when I ask Christians, who's the God of this world? Oh, that's the God of the Bible. I'm not kidding you. I usually get that answer. It's like, no, it's not. So that's Satan's ploy. He's going to do anything to get worship. Can you imagine you're number 2 in the whole universe? You're ahead of cherubim and seraphim and all this, and you're not happy. I know. It boggles the mind. So now exactly how he felt is what he's using to make the family fall. And he's going in there and attacking the woman. There is nothing in the world that is better that I have ever seen than a godly woman. And I really mean that. A godly woman is worth her weight in gold. In fact, Solomon said, what was it, in Ecclesiastes, I think? He said something like, I'm going to really paraphrase. He goes, I found one man righteous in 1,000. I couldn't find one righteous woman amongst 10,000. That's how rare they are. Much more worth than gold. The problem is men and women don't understand their roles and they won't play them. God has a role for the woman, and and one's not better than the other. Yeah. It's just like in the pantheon, and what God had was, it was God, remember? 2 Corinthians 11. Then it was Christ. Then it was man, right? And then it was the woman. Now here's my question. Christ is submitting to God the Father. Does that make him inferior? No, we don't teach that, do we? They're exactly equal in substance and essence, and they're on an equal level. But Christ submits to God. And what an example, right? Now, when women submit to men, does it mean that they're inferior? No. That's stupid. Now, when you get right here, yeah, it does mean that, okay? There's a break right there. There's a big gap right there. But I'm just trying to make the point. No, Christ has given us a great model of submitting to God the Father. Women submit to the men, okay?
Or to submit to one another in love.
Yes. And that's coming up in my series of the most misused verses, or misinterpreted verses. Which is, okay, but let me just say this real quick. I'm glad you brought that up. Ephesians, that's just before he gets into husbands and wife. When it says to submit one to another, he does not mean everybody submit to everybody else.
No.
He means specific, and then right after that verse, he tells you what the relationships are. Women are to submit to men, children are to submit to, and the model is Christ and the church. I have yet to find one pastor that understands that. I mean, all the pastors I talk to, they all say, no, it's everybody submit to one another. Well, does the church, or does Christ have to submit to the church? Oh, no, it doesn't apply there. It's one to another, though, an example. That's what he uses. Oh, are the parents supposed to submit to the kids? Oh, no, it doesn't mean, you see what I'm saying? It just means it, for some reason it means that, but then when you get down to specifics, no, it doesn't mean that. So it gets me frustrated. But that's okay. I look at the guy's job and stuff, and it's just like, I wish he would have made the women to lead, because that takes a load off my shoulders. Generalization is all it is that usually the criteria to lead the youth group, you have to be young and be around that age. Now, are there people, was Timothy young? He said, Paul wrote Timothy, say, let no one look down your youthfulness. Of course, he wasn't the youth leader. They didn't really do that. They actually stayed together as families in the church. They had this weird idea. They were not as advanced as us. Okay? That's the truth. So, but he says, let nobody look down your youthfulness. So that, again, a slightly different context. So he was a young leader. but he wasn't chosen because of his age. He was chosen for his spiritual maturity. And of course, when you're discipled by the Apostle Paul, you get a little bit of an advantage. There's a pattern, and of course, the Bible's all about patterns. When the northern kingdom split from the southern kingdom, when Israel split from Judah, okay, after King David, actually after Solomon, Rehoboam, his son, and the kingdom split. Of course, the northern kingdom just went all haywire because they were worshiping golden calves and stuff. Meanwhile, in the southern kingdom, they had the temple of God, all right, and they had the priesthood. Did you notice, guys, something about the generation after generation? Did you see a pattern there? What was that pattern? You would have a godly generation followed by a ungodly, followed by a godly. It was almost perfectly like that. Maybe not, maybe sometimes you have two in a row. You would think the godly generation could raise up another godly generation, right? It's weird. It's like it went back and forth. And I'm seeing that happening today. Look at the church leaders. But it could also be the time we're living in, the time of apostasy. It could be that. But these younger, the sons, are not exactly like their fathers. Okay? But that's okay. You know why? Because the Levitical priesthood was hereditary, but the pastorate's not.
It's not like a corporation where you get to put your child in.
Well, see, my whole point, Lisa, was in the Levitical priesthood, that was you had to be of the family of Aaron to be the high priest. Okay, right. You couldn't just step up, you're the godliest guy, we'll make you high priest. If you're from the tribe of, say, Benjamin or something. How come it's always the son who inherits the father's pulpit? Is he necessarily the most godly one? No. But it's just like this. See, is that the corporate church?
That is corporate church.
I'm the CEO. I built this. So I'm going to hand it down to my son. We have our cherished, idols in the religious world. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but we do. And then maybe we find out maybe they're not quite like that. It's okay to learn about them, because are you following a man, a church leader, or are you following Christ? We're all in this room, all of us to some degree about something are deceived. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now, the question is, how open are you to the truth? How open are you to the truth? So it used to be, we could make fun of other churches and their hierarchy and stuff, but when it came down our hierarchy in our church, well, that was the word, right? Well, now I think we're starting to learn a little bit different, right? That maybe we should just go by the word of God. Maybe we should. And believe me, leaders are there for a reason, right? God gave the church leaders for a reason. And he supplied that for the equipping of the saints. But I'm just saying, ultimately, when you stand before God, it can't be, well, that's what I was taught. Can't be that. It's, well, didn't I give you a brain? Didn't I give you the Holy Spirit? Didn't I give you my word? Why don't you know that? Well, there were good TV shows on, right? So we're all going to be responsible, and we all have to search and look for this stuff, okay? Now, this is a good time. I was actually going to bring out my Daniel statue, but we only have a few more minutes. And so we're going to go through a quick review, okay? Because you can never go over this stuff too much. So those two, any more questions? Do they have?
No.
Okay, good. And like, no, I won't bring up that situation. But anyways, so in Daniel 2, what happens in Daniel 2?
There's a dream, Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And who has a dream? Nebuchadnezzar, all right. And he sees a statue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in that statue, what do we have? Yes, and who's the head?
Babylon.
Yeah, which is Babylon. And then the next succeeding empire, that was gold right here, right? And this is silver. Okay. Oh, who said it? Yes. Because we know there's two arms, right? So that's an easy giveaway. Medes and Persians. Okay, great. And then the loins of bronze. Yes. So Greece. And then this is out of iron, right? Okay. And then that is equal to Rome. All right. And then all of a sudden we get down to the toes, the feet, which are made out of what?
Clay and iron.
Clay and iron. So it's a mixture. So it's kind of a subtle transition, and going from the legs to that, the feet is a gap, which we know as
The church age.
Yeah, the church. It's the church age gap. Remember, from Rome, when Jesus was crucified, and to the revived Roman Empire, the tribulation period is the church. It's a church gap. Okay. Now, here's an interesting question. When John's raptured up to heaven, how many elders are there before the throne of God? 24. 24 elders. That's interesting. And here's a little clue about the pre-trib rapture. That's the church. When John's raptured up, that's the church. Well, how do you know? Do you know how many church age gaps there are in the Old Testament? There's 24 gaps and there's 24 elders. I wonder if there's a correspondence trying to tell us something there. Huh? The church. If you ask me for their names, I don't know. Okay. There are positions, like when the sons of Zebedee came to Jesus and said, well, can we sit on your right hand and left hand? You know, there's different positions. And then he said, well, it's not for me, it's for my Father to decide that. Okay.
And it might be like Paul.
It could be. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. I would think, I know the 12 tribes of Israel, or the 12 apostles will sit on the 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes. So I would say they're not a member of that, okay? And the Apostle Paul is not one of those 12 apostles judging the 12 tribes. You know why?
He wasn't one of the originals?
No, he was an apostle.
Right.
But why is he not one of the 12 apostles that's going to be judging the 12 tribes? Because, but they had to. Someone had to come later on because Judas was deposed. Here's why. Because he was the apostle to the Gentiles.
Oh, yeah.
So it could be, who was that guy? Mattathias? Whoever, when they drew straws, he could have been valid, even though people like saying, well, that didn't count. It was Apostle Paul coming later. I think it is actually the Apostle Paul is not on one of the 12 tribes. That's really getting off on some sides. But, okay, so I think that when you become perverse and dark, in Timothy, it talks about deceiving and being deceived. In other words, you're so used to deceiving, and who's the master deceiver? Satan. I'm just wondering if in his perversity and in his darkness and in his deception, if he doesn't really believe he can win. Even though, if anyone should know, it should be the former number 2 guy, right? I mean, he's seen the glory of God. He should know that, there's no chance here. So that's my own personal theory, okay?
He's bought his own deception.
Yeah, he's bought his own deception. I mean, when they all line up at Armageddon, who knows what kind of weapons they're going to have. You know, we think of bazookas and all that, but man, with the technology they have today, you know, I'm sure they have a lot of high-tech stuff, but I just think it's that. He's just so perverse, so dark, he thinks he's going to win. I know, it's unimaginable.